everyone, and welcome to another episode of my podcast through the MM360 movement. We are calling it Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I am your host, Dr. Slava, or as some of you know me through social media, especially my Instagram account, I am STJ, Slava the Jordanian. So welcome back, and I really appreciate you joining us and listening and watching. As a reminder, these episodes are going to be as a podcast available for you on all different platforms, especially the Apple podcast platform, and it's going to be available on YouTube. I am going to be uploading these episodes on the Greenwood Dental Partners YouTube channel. This episode, it's all about my trip to Egypt. And as you know, this podcast, or let me repeat it for the newcomers, it's all about mastering an unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs. Experts will tell you that our belief system is basically what helps us draw the strength to thrive and survive as an immigrant. And we have discussed it on the previous episodes with my one and only, my co-host, JD Youssef, is that as an immigrant, whether you are displacing yourself by default or displacing yourself by design, we draw and we carry with us our system of beliefs. It doesn't matter what kind of beliefs that you have, those tools that you carry with you from your home world into the new world as you acculturate and as you simulate into the new society. It is a very helpful system, and like I said, very helpful tool to draw strength, to draw tenacity, to draw stamina, to keep you going as an immigrant as you are displacing yourself from your home world into the new world, regardless where you're going. And I mentioned it before in other episodes when I discussed the range of displacement. It doesn't really matter whether you are displacing yourself within your home world from a very small quaint village or very small town where everybody knows everybody into the big city, or displacing yourself altogether into a brand new world, a new society, new culture, new custom, new religions, new demographics, new geography, new landscape, new weather, new food, new agriculture, new language. So it doesn't really matter where you're displacing yourself. We will carry that belief system with us because that's all we have. So you might, as you simulate in the new society, you might change that belief system. You might modify that belief system. You might update it, put a modern twist to it. And that's why I really wanted to bring you guys some of the highlights of my trip to Africa, North Africa, specifically Egypt. For some of you that doesn't know much about my background, my father is Palestinian and my mother is Jordanian. When I say my mother Jordanian, I am referring to the tribes of Jordan. So my mother's upbringing was more within the structure of the tribal connection of Jordan, the traditional gender role expectation of the tribes of Jordan. And she comes from a town called Asalt, which is bordering the West Bank of Palestine. My father lineage originally comes from Syria or Levantine, and they settled in Nablus and then the West Bank, and then eventually they ended up in Jordan. I married an Egyptian. I married an Egyptian that his paternal ancestors come from the west bank of the Nile, and the maternal ancestors come from the tribes of Egypt. My mother-in-law always, as I remember it, always reminiscent nostalgically about her tribal connection and her tribal traditions that her father taught her, and she always carried that with her. So it was such a great treasure for me and a pleasure to sit down and talk to her about and compare her stories to my mom's story coming from Egypt. African tribes tradition is different than the Asia tribe tradition, specifically Jordan. So his family, his paternal ancestors, they settled in the west bank of Egypt. It's called Mansoura or Mahalla, where they're mostly farmers. They took care of their land. They grew mostly cotton, his family. Now, his maternal side of his father's side, they are Turkish and they are a little bit of English in them. So anyways, I've been married about 32 years and I never been to Egypt. I was born and raised in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. My father graduated from the University of Ain Shams in Cairo, if I remember correctly. And my mom's sister, she graduated from the Cairo University. She actually ended up with a master's in sociology. And my mother went to school with a full scholarship as the first woman in her town in Assault to actually leave to college. And she followed her father's footsteps because my grandfather was the first of the 9 sons of his tribe to actually complete a college education in agriculture engineering in the University of Baghdad in Iraq in the 50s. And then he went back to Jordan, married my mother-in-law, and the rest is history. So Ehab's family is very, very interesting. They are just one of those spirits that I can't even explain the level of generosity, the level of humility, and the humble approach about life. His family is a rainbow of different achievements. Some of them seeked college education, some of them didn't. Some of them played a huge role in the military and in the military history of Egypt. Some of them just seeked, they were teachers or accountant, very humble jobs. So 32 years with my connection, emotional connection, and family connection to Egypt, I never got the chance to go back to Egypt and visit and meet his Egypt extended family members. I have met, of course, all his family members that are here in the United States. And I couldn't even imagine if they used to tell me all the time, my in-laws, is that, oh, you think we're nice. Wait until you meet our Egypt family. I'm like, how is that even possible? Their level of graciousness, the level of generosity, the level of warmth, their level of openness and welcoming, tolerance, there's no judgment in the relationship that I had with my in-laws, and also with the relationship I just started to build with my husband's extended family in Egypt. It's fascinating. So why am I talking about this? Because it's all about mindset. I do believe that your belief system creates your future. Your belief system creates your conduct. And and I teach my team, right? If you want to change the perception from others about yourself, you need to change your conduct. And one of the things that I learned or took away from visiting Egypt is the high level of accountability of their attitude and their conduct and their behavior. It is so high that I've been working in the United States for 26 years in dentistry, and I lived in the United States for 36 years. And I never seen that level of accountability as I have seen with the Egyptian people that I encountered in Egypt. I was there for about 14 days. And I spent the first 4 days in Cairo, in the heart of Cairo. I stayed in the Fairmont, right on the Nile, with the hustling and the heart of busy Cairo. And we took off for 3 days down to the south at Luxor to visit, of course, the Valley of the Kings. And we did the touristy, thing. And I am so grateful and thankful for his family that just facilitated. And we got so much done. We've seen enough to give us an idea of what Egypt is all about, with its glory, with its history, with its culture, with this rich agriculture, with the rich architecture. It's such a rich country. So anyways, again, going back, I've been married for 32 years, and we finally decided to go to Egypt. My husband, last time in Egypt, just to put things into perspective, one of his cousins, his first cousins, is 41-year-old, a mechanical engineer, happily married, and lives outside of Cairo. The last time he saw my husband, he was 1 year old. So he was a toddler, just barely out of infancy. So he doesn't really remember Ehab, nor Ehab had that quality interaction with him, because my husband was about 13, 14 years old. He was a teenager. He's not going to be, babysitting or entertaining a 1-year-old cousin toddler. So the reason why we decided to go now, and it was always in the plan, is, and I believe that in life, some of the unfortunate events in life can be perceived as a crisis, but in my mind, in my world, my belief system, I have built this concept that with every crisis, there is an opportunity. So this time of year, last year in the winter, I think December 21st, his youngest uncle, who is a national military veteran hero, ended up with a mini stroke. He's very healthy, never taken any medication. He works out every single day. He goes to the gym. He's very, very militant. He still lives through the military system of lifestyle. And all of a sudden, they noticed that he was with his family, and they noticed some signs of incoherence. So, of course, I rushed him to the emergency room, and 3 days in the ICU, they checked him out. He's on a lot of medication, and he's not so happy about it because he has never been on medications before. And now he has to take a list of medication. He has to make sure that he's hydrated and he eats properly, every single day, routinely, every single day, consistently, so he can take his medications. Now, the interesting thing about that, they said that this was not his first and his only stroke. They have found mini strokes that led to that stroke. And they connected his stroke. The reason behind it is dehydration. For some reason, I don't know how they concluded that he's so dehydrated. He told me that when I asked him, and I said, "Why don't you drink water?" He goes, "I was never that person that constantly paying attention to the amount of water that I consume. I'm just go, go, go." He's very, very high energy, and he just didn't drink water. And as you know, Egypt is a desert. It's a desert weather, very, very warm in the summer, about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. With humidity, if you're in Cairo, if you're outside of Cairo, it's a very, very dry heat. So you can definitely dehydrate, especially when you are on the advanced years in your 70s. I'm sure you dehydrate so fast. A lot of the places don't have air conditioning. And if you're walking and out and about in the streets of Cairo, I can see, and it's very, very dusty. So Cairo is very dusty. That part of the ancient world hasn't really changed. And they haven't figured out a way to keep it dust clean. So I can't imagine in the summertime trying to run errands, you're going about your day, and not paying attention and not drinking water, I can see where he can be or get very, very dehydrated. So he checked out of the hospital, and we got the news last year in February that he had a stroke. So, of course, I said, okay, that's it. We cannot just not be or not reconnect with our family in Egypt. And that's part of the traditional tribal connection, that what we call the Arabism of the way of life. And so I initiated the FaceTime calls. I told my husband, you gotta get to know your cousins, and we have to start rebuilding the bridge. Now you're an adult, because life is too short, right? So that's what I mean with, it was a crisis. It was a scary thing for the whole family. We were very worried being so far away from our home world into a new world. And that is one of the challenging things as an immigrant. When you leave everything that you know and everybody that you love behind, and hope for the best, finger crossed. And all you can do is just pray every single day, that hoping that nothing huge happens, that you cannot reach out, a life crisis or life-changing events, that you won't be able to reach out fast enough in order to be with your family, consoling them, comforting them, and be there for them, hugging them and holding their hands, and validate them and affirm with them that everything is going to be okay, and to lend and extend that family support while you are so far away. It's not easy. It's not easy to get on a plane and to fly the 9 hours. By the time to get to Egypt from Boston, where we are, is 8 hours into Turkey, 2 hours into Cairo, and then you land, and it takes a while to get there. It's not that easy. So we got the news of him getting sick. So I told my husband, it's time for us to rebuild the bridges and reconnect, which we did the whole year last year. We met every single month, got to know them, got to know their mindset, got to know their personalities. My husband got to talk to his uncle, which was a blessing in disguise, because in 2022, we have lost my dear father-in-law, who was the patriarch of his family. He was the eldest of 11 children, same parents, by the way, which is unusual sometimes for to see that in that generation. But Ehab's paternal grandparents, they were so in love, and they had 11 children together. So they were so in love. I have to say, Nina Dawlat, my grandmother-in-law, put it this way. She's the sweetest of creature I ever met in my life. But she was very committed to her husband's memory, that she only, just like Queen Victoria, she wore black from the day he passed till the day she passed at almost 90, I think, or 92 years old. And that's commitment. They were soulmates through and through. From all the stories that I have heard from my mother-in-law, and all the stories that even Nina Dawlat, my grandmother-in-law, have shared with me during her visits and her trips to the United States, which I cherish till the day I die. As you know, I love stories. And that's how we learn, and that's how we connect, through our stories. So we booked our trip in March, and from March until November, we continued to connect and revive that traditional tribal connection that the Arab style of life and communication thrives on. It is the bloodline of what keeps us together, is the communication, telling the stories, hearing each other's thoughts. And it's very fascinating that with all the calls we did every single month, not even a minute of judgment. Not even, I never felt that I was judged for my thoughts. I was judged for my opinion. We talked about everything that life could bring forth. And I never really felt that I was in a safe space that I can express myself the way I would like people to perceive me. And that was very fulfilling. That was such a treat, honestly. And it just made me even yearn more and more. I went to bed every single time after I spoke with them. It's like, I can't wait to get to Egypt. I cannot wait. Are these people for real? Are they as nice as they sound? Are they as calm and as warm and neutral as they look? And I kept telling myself that, let me get there, and then I can actually see for myself whether it is just a complementary way of communicating with us, or it was an actual, truly genuine, very authentic way of conducting themselves. So the month went by, and as we got closer, and to be very, very honest with you, I was very anxious. I just didn't know. I've studied about Egypt, my father's stories about his life in Egypt. Really quick background, my father was from the Nabilsi family, which is a very affluent family. And in the 50s and the 60s, those affluent families, they used to send their boys to boarding school. It was in Egypt, and that was the top boarding schools in the Middle East for boys and men. And they started at the 8th grade, sometimes even earlier, and they continued. They graduated high school there, and some of them will continue there from college. My dad did, and he went with his cousins, and he was with family, but that explains all his habits, and his lifestyle was more Egyptian than it was Palestinian or Jordanian. However, Palestinians and Egyptians have very, very, very common customs and lifestyle habits, which I did not discover until I actually married my husband and lived with my in-laws, until, I couldn't live with them until I moved. And that just made sense of everything that my dad, it was like, that's why my dad did this. That's why my dad liked to eat that kind of food. That's why my dad's habits were his music, the way he listened. My dad played the oud, which is a very classic Arab instrument. But he played it in a very Egyptian style too. And that's what he picked up from where he lived in Egypt, when he lived in Egypt. So as you can tell, my Egypt trip was not only a family obligation to revive, like I said, rekindle that traditional tribal connection between my husband and his family, especially when you realize life is too short, and his uncle, which is the youngest of, I think he's the only male of his family that's still alive. Out of the 11, there are only 2 girls and 1 boy. Uncle Salah is one of them, which is Salah ad-Din. And he's 76 or 78 years old. Don't quote me. I had a lot of information that brought back from Egypt, so I'm trying to just wrap my head around it and organize it in my head. So we took Turkish Airlines from Boston, which is highly, highly, highly recommended. I think it won so many awards. I think it's the best airline in south of Europe, the best airline in Europe. And it was amazing. And also landing in Turkey, landing in Istanbul, as a Levantine, we all have at some point some drops of blood of Turkish in us. So for me, it's almost like I landed in the homeland or the motherland in Istanbul, but I was only there for a couple of hours. Unfortunately, did not get the chance to visit Turkey, because the mission of this trip is to make it to Egypt for so many reasons, which I will share with you guys, beside the importance of my husband rekindling that bond with his family in Egypt. So we landed in Turkey and then we flew into Cairo. And like I said, we spent 4 days in Cairo. We did everything. I prayed in three famous mosques in Egypt. I prayed in the Al-Azhar mosque, and I prayed in Hassan al-Hussein, and I prayed in Amr ibn al-As mosque. And it was such a spiritual experience, if you can imagine, praying in such ancient mosque with all the history and all the reputation of these mosques, and as places that people gather together. And I just didn't want to. I don't want to be fussy. I just wanted to be a fly on the wall among the people in the public and just doing what everybody is doing. So I wanted spiritually to have that experience and to take that back, home with me, which I did. And I'm very, very blessed that I'm very grateful that I got the chance to do so. And since my in-laws always wanted to go to Egypt with us, and that was their dream. So my mother-in-law at age 76 got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. One of the customs of Muslim to go to pilgrimage, that's one of the basically checklists. If you go to pilgrimage, all your sins are erased and forgiven, and almost you start a new life, a new record of actions, basically. So they went to obviously Hajj many times, my in-laws, and one of the tradition is the females, they will go and buy gold. It's almost like they're reinvesting into themselves, and that's their wealth. They are wealthy in jewelry and gold, traditionally, and then hoping to leave that behind to their family in order to exchange it with different pieces or sell it to help family members that are in need. So when my mother-in-law noticed that she was not with it anymore, it was here actually in my home. And they were visiting from New Jersey, and we were just literally on this couch watching TV. And I always watch TV with her. I always watch soap opera with her and all the game shows with her since I lived with them during my dental school days in New York. And I noticed that she was dozing off. So I thought, she was tired from the trip. So I asked her to go rest. And I told her I will wake her up when dinner is ready. And she looked at me, she goes, "I'm not tired, I'm just confused." And I said, "What are you confused about? Is it do you want me to change the show? Do you want to watch something else?" She goes, "No, I'm just confused." And I said, "Why don't you go rest and then I'll check on you?" Something told me that something's wrong, right? And being in healthcare and public health, I learned to pick up some of the signs that memory challenges. And so 10-15 minutes, I said, "You know what? Let me go check on her." So I went inside and I found her, she was crying. And I said, "Are you okay? Are you in pain?" She goes, "No, I'm just worried." And I said, "What are you worried about?" She goes, "Muhammad," her husband, my father-in-law. And I said, "What's wrong with him? Is he sick? Or, is there something that you want to tell me?" She goes, "No, I just worried about him because he's not back from work yet." Now, granted, my father-in-law was already retired from the New Jersey Transit Railroad, and he was a union guy. And I said, hold on a second. My father-in-law is sitting outside with my husband, your son. He's not working anymore. He's retired. And that's when she gave me that look. It's like, oh my God, something's wrong, right? I said, "Why don't you take a nap and then I'll wake you for dinner?" So that was one visit. The other visit also, the following visit, I think a couple of months later, she came over at the same thing. I'm confused. Then when I used to take her out to eat, she loved Panera's, and I'd get her a bagel and stuff, and she'll take a bite. And she started rummaging into her purse, took her purse apart, and then she'll put it back together. Took everything out of her purse in the public setting and pull it together. And it's not like her, because her purse is her, it's like, it's a covenant, like nobody touches her purse. Nobody knows what's in her purse. But she took it apart in public and spread it out on the table and then put it back together. I'm like, it's not like you to do that. Don't lose anything. The third time we were in New Jersey visiting them, we were driving somewhere and I was sitting in the passenger seat and she was behind me. And all of a sudden she leans forward with her gold and she said, please take this. And I said, what, hold on, what are you doing? And she's like, she took all her gold, like her necklaces, her bracelet, everything. She never takes her bracelets off, never. Not even to bedtime, not even she showered with them, everything. She cooked with them. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, just take them. Trust me, just take them. And I said, okay, I will take them. What do you want me to do with this? It's very traditional heavy gold. And she said, just keep them. And then if anything happens to me, please promise me to go to Egypt, exchange them, and give a piece to every cousin of Ehab in order for them to have a piece of me. And I said, oh my God, I start crying. I became very dramatic about it. And I said, all right, I can't deal with this right now. You're not going anywhere. Nothing is wrong with you. Of course, I was in denial. And because my mother-in-law, if you guys knew, she was my best friend. She was my rescue line. She was my helpline. Through all the challenges I had to champion and conquer in my personal life, whether spirituality, career, work, school, socially, marital challenges. She was my guiding light, basically. So unfortunately, she did get diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She fought Alzheimer's for 8 years, and she passed away in 2016. And I had her gold since the day she gave it to me. And in my mind, it's a mindset, right? It's like my beliefs, like I'm going to make it to Egypt one year. It doesn't matter if I crawl there. I don't care if I'm 90 years old. That is her dying wishes, and I had to execute it because it was put upon me to execute. She entrusted me to get it done. Now, fast forward, my father-in-law, we moved him here, and every time I talked to him about Egypt, he made me promise him to take Ehab to Egypt, my husband. And he kept telling me it's very important for him to go back. It's very important for him to rekindle that relationship with his family. I get it. He loves the United States. He's more American than he is Egyptian, but it doesn't really matter. It's very important for the family to see that they are important to him, and they are important to him enough for him to disrupt his busy life here in the United States and make some time to go and see them. And I told him, it's like, I promise you, the first opportunity we are going to go together, as him. He goes, no, don't worry about me. I've been there so many times. I'm not going to make it. Probably I'm going to die before you guys end up going. And I kept saying, don't say that. But he was right. He passed away in 2022. And his dying wish was, please take my son back to Egypt and please try to issue some kind of residency, some kind of record for him, because it doesn't matter how long you live here in the United States. It doesn't matter how long you've been an immigrant. You are an Egyptian. He is an Egyptian, and he needs to have that connection by establishing a legal record there. Which it means that we needed to generate a ID for him, because there's no record of him except that the fact that he was born in Cairo, but he never lived in Egypt. So the crisis of his only living paternal uncle had the stroke. Number two, my mother-in-law dying wish of distributing her gold. And number three, my father-in-law dying wish bestowed upon me to execute is to take Ehab back to Egypt and And for me personally, to reconnect with my extended family in Egypt and to be in Egypt, that was important for me because, like I said, I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia, and I went to private schools in Saudi. And back then, I'm not sure about how they teach religion in Saudi, but Egypt is the center of Islamic studies, which is University of Azhar. A lot of my friends, when I got back, asked me, how was Egypt? And that question, I can write books answering that question. Again, I lived in Saudi Arabia. I knew what Egypt is all about from the TV programs and the movies, and my dad sharing his stories growing up in Egypt, my aunt sharing her stories being in college in Egypt in the 60s, having Egyptian friends, married to an Egyptian, living the Egyptian life. With everything I've known, tried to simulate that in my head and prepare me to be in Egypt. When I landed there, I threw all that out of the window. It doesn't even compare to anything that I've heard, anything that I have seen, anything that I have read, like when I was in Egypt, experiencing it, being in the heart of Cairo, the hustling and bustling of that life, the commuter. Now, let me just give you some data to draw this picture of what Egypt is all about. All right. So as of January 2023, in Cairo, there are 10.2 million people living in Cairo, not commuting. Okay. So Cairo is an ancient city, as you guys know, but also the metropolitan of Cairo. Cairo is regarded as the 12th largest metropolitan city in the world, with 22.1 million people living there. That metropolitan Cairo. So metropolitan Cairo, there is the center of Cairo, which is Old Cairo, that the government is trying to clean up, okay? Which I agree with them to a certain point, because one of the things that we did, we actually walked the walk of life, the past life, where my husband was born 1968 in Shubra, Cairo. We went and visited that apartment, which is under rent control, that's still in the family, in his family, paternal family. So when my father-in-law left 1970, he actually landed in the United States Thanksgiving Day. 54 years later, I go to Egypt with my husband and we land in Cairo Thanksgiving Day 2024. Now, this is one of the many ironies and many coincidences that happen in Egypt. So that's just the beginning. The end of the trip, we managed to visit, like I said, the apartment that my husband was born 52 years ago, I think 54 years ago, because my husband just turned 56 in Egypt. And he was 2 years old when he left. Literally, they landed Thanksgiving Day, 1970. My husband turned 2 December 9th, 1970. And I agree with the government that the fact that some of these buildings needs to be taken down and the streets needs to be widened, because I think Paris went through this also. They widened the streets because, God forbid, if there is an emergency situation like fire or an elderly is sick, there is no way for first responders to make it to these apartments. So from a health safety point of view, these roads need to be widened, and they're very dusty, and the air quality in Cairo is very, very poor. The smog is so bad there that I'm asthmatic, and I took my nebulizer, I took my inhaler, and I used it a couple of times after ending up in the hotel after a day of walking around. So it is dusty because it's desert, but also the smog because there's so many people living right in Cairo. And I agree with the government that needs to be cleaned up. So what they're doing, they're trying to buy different buildings, knocking them down. And what they want to do, they want to redesign old Cairo, making it into a touristic destination. That's it. Basically, hotels, restaurants, nightclubs, and of course, keeping all the ancient architecture and structures for the tourists and the visitors. And then move everybody outside of Cairo, which is the new Cairo. That's where his cousins end up moving to. The advancement of the transportation outside of the city of Cairo, I never seen anywhere, not even in Europe. The highways that have built outside of Cairo, I never seen anywhere in the United States. Like the highways here in Boston are just like war zones. There are potholes everywhere. And the big dig, it took like forever here in Boston to complete. I don't know how they build so fast, but as you know, Egyptians has the reputation of building and designing and architects and engineering. They're brilliant, right? So the idea is to move everybody out that is from the old Cairo and make Cairo inside just for tourists so you can clean things up. The malls that we have seen outside in the new Cairo, it's futuristic, it's out of this world. So I've seen people below the extreme poverty line. I've seen an old man, 11 o'clock at night, we're driving, going back to the hotel with his colostomy bag. He was delirious. He was shouting and yelling in the abyss of the darkness of downtown Cairo. I've seen another old man just roaming the streets with his oxygen tank, dragging his oxygen tank behind him. I've seen an older woman in the Coptic district of Cairo, which is in Shubra, and she was, dressed in black head to toe with her cane, and I can tell she's struggling to breathe. And then when I asked her and I said, "Do you need help?" She goes, "No, I just need to go to the store to grab some groceries." I'm like, "Can I take you?" She goes, "No." They're so proud. She refused help. She goes, "No, I can make it. Thank you so much." She prayed for me, blessed me, and she moved on. I've seen children digging through the rubbish to get recycling items so they can go and sell it, recycle, so can get money. I have seen the amazing thing about Cairo, I think in Egypt, the law is you do not put down street animals. So the cats and dogs are roaming the streets of Cairo. They're very healthy. They're very happy. They're very clean. Dogs are, they get, I think, rabies shot free from the government, and you can see it on their ears. They have that tag, the rabies tag. You're not allowed to shush them away. You're not allowed to kick them. You're not allowed to abuse them. They don't put them down. There are a lot of charitable veterinarian clinics that they have there. You can take the dog if you see them, they're sick. They can treat them for free. Same thing how they deal with their horses. They worship their animals, their camels and their horses, which we've seen all around the pyramid, the Giza area when we visited. I've been to the pyramids. And I walked into the pyramids. I went into the tomb room. I almost died, and I had to take my inhaler. And at some point I sat down and I told my husband, "I can't do this." And luckily there were two American young women that are coming down the shaft, climbing down, and I was climbing up, and they said, "You got this. You're almost there. You have to go in there to experience this." And what an experience indeed it was. But it is... So it is a country, for me, I feel like Egypt is going to turn into the new China. And I've spoken to very affluent, very social media influencers in Egypt. I have spoken to just, your average Joe that working in the hotel. I've spoke to people from the South, very tribal, very traditional people. And they're all acted the same way. They all acted with such a high level of humility and generosity and warmth and tolerance. And complete lack of judgment. Like, those are strangers in the street. I'll stop and I look at them and I can feel that they want to talk to me. So I'll stop and talk to them. How's your day? What are you guys doing? And even merchant, buying juice off the street, or buying, a trinket to take home with me. I love to talk to people, and I love the stories, and they just, they're open. They have nothing to hide, and they really appreciate, and they love their country so much that the fact that you are in their country and you are supporting tourism, and they're supporting the way of life or their income, they're so thankful, so appreciative. But it's genuine. It's very authentic. It's not fake because they want a tip. It's not fake because it's like, oh, you're coming in to give me money because you're a tourist. Please come again. It's really, really warm, especially when they found out that, when they asked me, where are you from? And I told them, my dad's Palestinian, my mom from Jordan, I was born in Saudi Arabia. And they were just like, their whole face opened up. And to me, living in the United States with everything that's going on back home, I'm very careful to be politically correct, and I'm very aware of political correctness, not to shed too much light about how I feel towards what's going on over there. But in Egypt, although it's a stereotype, like, you shouldn't talk about this, you shouldn't talk about that, the government is listening, I didn't feel that way. I honestly didn't. I was treated like a queen when they found out that my ancestor came from Palestine. And I was treated like a saint. I had policemen, when they found out, they cried and they sobbed with me about the situation over there. I had the Valley of the King tomb guardians, they are nomads of the Luxor tribes that they protect, and some of them are tour guides. And when they asked me where they're from, because they, picked up on my accent, and I shared with them about my Palestinian ancestry, they kissed my head. They grabbed my head and kissed on my forehead, and they blessed me. And they prayed for me, and they prayed for the world. They prayed for peace. They prayed for love. They prayed for humanity. But that's the mindset of Egyptians. How can the population of Egypt, and I've been in the 12 days, I've been outside of Cairo, I've been inside of Cairo, I've been to the ancient ruins, I've been in Luxor, the south, I've been to the posh and the bougie part of Cairo, and I've been to the Shubra, like I said, where, still, like, when you go to Shubra, when we went to Shubra, where my husband was born, in that apartment, it really took me back in time. I felt I was back in the 50s, and I wish someday I will share with you guys some of the footage and some of the videos that I took. It's just fascinating. Even watching those videos after I got back, I cannot even wrap my head around the fact that I was there and I got back. I feel like I was in a time portal and I came back. But the bottom line is, if these Egyptians that living in such a chaotic city, such a controversial political system, with the average income of $200 a month, taking that income, paying for your rent, paying for your food, raising your children, sending your children to school, but they don't even send their children just to school. The kids go to school, and I think there are 2 shifts, from 8 to 12, and then from like 2 to 5, because the classes are so full and the teachers cannot teach 50 plus students in one class. It's very, very exhausting. So the elementary school children, they go only for half days. So the parents pay for extra curriculum and extra lessons and tutors to teach their children, because their only way out of any situations they're in that's challenging, socioeconomical situation, religious situation, political situation, is education and schooling. And the parents know that, and they plant that into their children, and they seek higher and higher education with every breath they take every single day. Because knowledge, as I mentioned in the previous episode, my dad used to tell me, a government can come and kick you out. A husband can come and divorce you, take your children, take your money. A friend can dupe you into a business, right? And you can lose your business somehow. Anything can happen. The only thing that nobody can take away from you is what's in your head. Your knowledge and education is the only tool that you need to hold on to and protect and sustain, because if you go down, that's the only way that you can actually pull yourself out of any situation and move on, survive, and thrive on top of that. So again, if the Egyptian people, and I'm sure I'm going to do more episode about that because I haven't even scratched the surface of my experience in Egypt. And it's a mindset, right? It's mastering an unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs. With all the complicated systems in Egypt to get anything done. And I'm going to talk about how we ended up even getting my husband's ID with all the connections that he has. I don't know how the average Egyptian gets anything done. But you look at them, they always make an eye contact, acknowledge the person that in front of you, say hello all the time and thank you and God bless you, despite what is going on in their life. So their belief system that to be more pleasant, conduct yourself with humility, be humble with your approach, how people perceive you because of your conduct, the high level of accountability, that's the mindset the Egyptians had, at least the ones that I encountered. Like I said, I encountered people that worked in cafes, people are managers on hotel, military people, influencers on social media, teachers, doctors. I've talked to so many people and interacted with so many people that across the board, they had this one belief system that carried them through all and every day challenges that an average Egyptian experience in order to survive a day in Cairo. It was total chaos in a very good way. I don't know. It's chaotic, but it's organized chaos. It's managed chaos. And they made it, and they made sure that that's the case when you are in Cairo. But at the end of the day, everybody was happy. Everybody was celebrating. Everybody was out and about and together with family and friends and in cafes and restaurants and bright lights. And every night there was a celebration of some sort. It wasn't like 6 o'clock, everybody's at home. I've seen children walking the streets, girls, in the dark alleys at 11 o'clock at night. And when I asked about like, how can you guys, we will not allow this here in the United States after 6 o'clock, especially in New England, 5:30, 6 o'clock, wintertime, it's dark, everybody's home. So when I asked his cousin, my husband's cousin, how is that even possible? He goes, Slava, forget about the cops. People look, after each other. So if that child is part of this neighborhood, first of all, they know their limitation. They don't go beyond a certain point. But the neighborhood look, after each other, after the children. If anything happened to that child, within seconds, the whole neighborhood comes out and they were searching for the child or checking what's wrong with the child. If they were, exposed or faced with, an unsavory behavior from anybody else. But that is the traditional tribal connection that Egypt has with its own advancement that I have witnessed above and beyond what this country, I ever seen in this country. But still, the bottom line is the fundamental values and belief system is that traditional tribal connection. And it hasn't changed through history. This country is over 5,000 years ago. Their civilization is over 5,000 years ago. Of course, it existed way before that. But it's crazy, how can a nation and how can people, and his uncle told me that, despite even the daily polarization that we have in Egypt, and political views and religious view, whatever, when in crisis, Egyptians come together and become one unit. And that is the mindset of the Egyptians. Regardless of who you are, religious you are, what religion you come from, the background, your features, what color skin you are, it doesn't really matter. An Egyptian is always going to be an Egyptian. And that, my friend, is the end of our episode. Thank you so much for listening. We are reaching the end of the hour. And thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this material. And let us know if you need to know more. I'm sure I'm going to do more episodes about Egypt because, like I said, I haven't even scratched the surface. And as a reminder, please look for it on all the podcast platforms. And I will be uploading this video on the Greenwood Dental Partners YouTube channel in order for you guys to have access to it. So thank you so much. And as I always say, please continue telling your stories for the sake of humanity. Keep sharing your stories with everybody. That's how we grow, and that's how we learn, and that's how we communicate. Storytelling is part of the Arabism lifestyle. And like I said, even with my visit in Egypt, the young generation, they love to sit down with you and tell you their stories. And that's how we exchange information, and that's how we gain knowledge about each other. So thank you so much. I hope to help for you guys to join me next time, and have an amazing, amazing day. Bye now.